Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sabir, pronouns he, him, and I run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Luvvie Ajayi Jones' latest book, Professional Troublemaker, The Fear Fighter Manual, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until after over 94 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers, booksellers, and authors like Luvvie and Nedra, we wouldn't be here today, and we are so truly appreciative of all of you. Tonight, we are thrilled to have with us Luvvie Ajayi Jones for the paperback release of her book, Professional Troublemaker, The Fear Fighter Manual. Luvvie is an award-winning author, speaker, and podcast host who thrives at the intersection of humor, media, and justice. She's the author of the New York Times bestsellers, Professional Troublemaker, and I'm Judging You, The Do Better Manual. Luvvie is an internationally recognized speaker, and she runs a community for disruptors called Love Nation. Find out more about Luvvie at luvvie.org and follow her on Instagram and Twitter at Luvvie. Joining Luvvie in conversation tonight is Nedra Glover Tawwab. Nedra is a licensed therapist and sought-after relationship expert. She has practiced relationship therapy for 12 years and is the founder and owner of the group therapy practice Kaleidoscope Counseling. Every day, she helps people create healthy relationships by teaching them how to implement boundaries. Her philosophy is that a lack of boundaries and assertiveness underlie most relationship issues, and her gift is helping people create healthy relationships with themselves and others. And so, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Luvvie and Nedra to the stage.
Oh man, it's gonna be a good night.
It is.
I'm excited for this conversation. Nedra, your hair is epic as always.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you.
Yes.
So I just want to say I listened to your book first and then I read the physical version, and listening to the book, I was like, oh my gosh, Luvvie is an assertiveness coach.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ooh, say more about that.
I think your book was so much around speaking up for yourself at work, in relationships, with family, all of the things, and how you've had your own challenges around doing that, and how there may be roadblocks. However, you need to assert yourself. And it's such an important conversation that we need to have because it is the reason that we are in spaces we don't want to be in.
You know, that is actually the first time somebody has reflected it to me in that way, an assertiveness coach. Because I mean, you write about boundaries. That is what Set Boundaries is about. And I've always been somebody who's been heavily boundaried. And I think, yeah, a lot of that has to be in you asserting certain things about your needs and your values. So I'm hoping I normalize some of that too, because, you know, like a lot of people are afraid of being assertive. I think we take it as if somebody calls us assertive, we might feel insulted by it. And I think for me, it's a fact. I am assertive. I will say how I'm feeling. I will talk about what I need, and there's no value judgment around it.
But we're taught in our families, at work, with friends, that it is a bad thing to speak your needs to other people. It's rude, it's mean, it's something that we should not do. We should keep it in, even though we are impacted via anxiety, depression, all of these things from holding on to stuff that needs to be let out.
And I think that's a problem. Like the fact that we can make a judgment of somebody saying, I need this thing, is a major problem. You know, people are like, I don't want to seem mean, because some of us has been called mean when you say, I don't like that. When you actually say, I don't like it, somebody will go, oh, that's kind of mean or rude, when it's just saying what your needs are and like what you're expecting from people. So I want us to unlearn that. I think as just humans in general got to start unlearning that when you are clear about where you stand and who you are, you're not being mean, you're being sure, right? And what is reflected as mean is because it's so counter to what is normalized. Like, if you are the person who says, so I'll tell you one thing that I always assert that happens online a lot to a lot of us. You know how people will tag you to something that has nothing to do with you, right?
I know where you're going because I see you doing it. Go.
You see me do it where people will like tag me where it'll show up in my photos under a clip of theirs that has zero to do with my words, my work, me in general. And they are doing it as a way to basically use my audience to get my audience's attention. What I always do, or as much as I can, depending on if I notice it or not, is I will DM the person and I will say, hey, please don't tag me to anything that doesn't have to do with me. I love when people tag me to my work, my words, do that all day long. Do it 30 times in a day. I'm here for that. But don't tag me to the video that you created about chicken because you want more people to watch it. And 95% of the time, what happens is the person responds with, oh my gosh, I'm sorry that you don't like that. I hear you, I won't do it again. And I always, 5%? 95% of the time, I'm telling you.
Well, what about that 5%? I want to hear about the 5.
The other 5% is they go, wow, I mean, I was just trying to make sure you saw it. But okay, you know, I mean, real full attitude, they feel offended by it.
Mm-hmm.
And they took me in that moment, asserting my boundaries, as an indictment of them. And that's how I think we assume everybody will take those moments. And I say those 5% is because we're expecting everybody to do that, but only a few people do it. I'm always emboldened by the 95% who go, thank you for telling me. Now I know. And then they don't actually do it again. Meanwhile, if I don't say it, that person tags me in one video, they're going to tag me in 3, they'll tag me in 20. And then I, in my own little corner, I'm mad. Why would they do that? Why are they doing this? And I say nothing. Meanwhile, this person has no clue that they crossed the boundary that you have. So I just say, put it forward. How the person takes it is not your business. And hopefully they take it well. But if they don't take it well, that's also a data point for you, because if they don't receive your boundaries with honor or with respect, then you know somebody that you might have to create a wall for.
Absolutely true. We have a lot of dialogue around how people will respond, even strangers, people we do not know. We will make up a whole story. I once talked to a little boy who said he was afraid of dogs. He was like 4. Okay. And I said, tell me why. And he said, dogs bite you and you could be running from them and they attacked you. And I said, did this happen to you? He said, no. I said, you are afraid of little miniature poodles, of all sorts of dogs. And this isn't even your story. And you're 4. You're creating these stories and you hold on to them as if they're true when this dog is actually friendly.
Well, it's because there comes a point where the lines between our stories and others will blur. Mm-hmm. The lines between what are actually our own fears and what other people's fears are that they gave to us are completely blurred. So it's the difference between, I always tell like people this about when they have kids around. I already know that one of my challenges is going to be to not pass on my fear of like rats, rodents, ants and bugs to little people around me. I don't want them to learn the stuff that now petrifies me. If they encounter and it petrifies them, great. You've learned that on your own. But how much of our own fears have we passed on to other people, our friends, our family members, our colleagues? We are constantly infusing that type of pain in other people. I think recently I posted something that had nothing to do with nothing. And somebody came in the comments was like, ooh, that might not go well. Dang. Like, I didn't ask for advice. I didn't ask for thoughts about it, but this person showed up with their full fear and decided to hand it over to me. And I had to make the decision to not take it on. If I'm saying I'm about to go on a trip, I remember one time I said I was going on a trip to Mexico, and I remember people coming into the comments being like, girl, don't eat the fruits, girl, because I heard, and I'm just like, have you been to Mexico?
Mhm.
Do you know what my stomach can do? Do you know what I eat on any given day? How are you telling me? Because you know you're going to be on the toilet this whole time. So to that point, we're just always taking on other people's stories. So the fact that this 4-year-old, that means somebody around this 4-year-old is petrified of dogs.
Absolutely.
And now he is.
Yeah. And I think on social media, we have to be careful around what we share. I know for me, people are constantly like, how do you do it all? I say, what do you see me do? Burning candles, watering plants, and posting content. You know what I do all day? Tons. You got 3 things today. I'm doing a lot of stuff that you don't see.
Yep.
But I learned early on in that space, a few years ago, I put up something like, I'm thinking about getting a dog. I got so many dogs are a lot of work. I said, I know I've had turtles, dogs, cats, birds. I know how much work a pet take. I don't need your feedback on, but I think when we say stuff, people feel like that's an opening to share their experience. And it can be a conversational boundary to let people know, I didn't ask for your feedback. I'm not taking requests. No, thank you right now. I'm really trying. I'm anxious about this. Please do not say more. This is a lot of information that I wasn't prepared. And sometimes you just have to stop them in their tracks and say, stop.
Yep.
Stop.
Even with people in our regular lives. So
Yes.
like one of the biggest things I've learned in the last couple of years is when somebody vents to me, when I am at my best, I ask them the question of, so do you want me to just listen? Or do you want me to offer up solutions? How can I be most helpful for you in this moment? When I'm at my best, I often fail at it, right? But in the times when I can slow myself down and do that, the best conversations happen because the person gets what they need and I get to give them what they want, not what I think they want.
I've learned that statement is really useful.
Yeah.
However, when we have relationships with people, if we are conscious of who we're talking to, we know if this person wants our advice or not based on our previous experiences with them. There are some people we give advice to and we get so mad because like, I've told her 50 times, this is what she needs to do. And she won't stop giving her advice. She just wants to vent. That's what that is a sign of. She just wants to talk about these problems. She wants you to nod and say, yes, girl, I can't believe it either. And then what happened? That's all you have to do. You're doing extra work by giving her tips and pointers and resources. Don't do that.
But then there comes a point where if this person keeps coming to you with the same venting problem, and you're like, I keep listening, but she's driving me crazy because I keep on being like, yes, girl, I understand. And she's not doing anything different, then you can honor the boundary of, listen, you have come to me 5 times with this one problem. I understand your frustration. I know you feel a bit angry about it. I've been listening to it so much that it's hard for me not to offer up advice to you. So it's either, I would prefer if you either stop bringing me the same issue or just do something about it so you no longer have to bring it to me. I think I can't listen to you vent about the same thing. We all have the friends who've had like the terrible relationships, like the terrible boyfriend, the terrible partner who's doing the same thing over and over again. Don't bring it to me 4 years in a row. Like for me, I'll be like, I don't feel like
shocking. It's now a pattern. What was he gonna do it again, girl? Every February. Every February. You know, y'all have a bad February. I want you to prepare for these Februaries because it's not shocking. Every year around this time.
Every year. Valentine's Day, he's gonna mess up.
He don't like Valentine's Day. I think that's the grand he don't want to be in a relationship on Valentine's Day. So he won that one every year.
And I just find that it's hard to continue to just be like, yeah, girl, yeah, I know, girl. I'll be like, ma'am, what you gonna do about it? Either you do something about it or you stop telling me about it. One of those things got to give, because at this point, I feel useless on your behalf. Like,
well, I can continue to hold space, but here's where I will set boundaries. I will say, I don't have any advice left to give. My suggestion is you talk to the person, particularly when people are talking about their romantic relationships. The best person to help you with this issue is the person you have the relationship with. I can't come over there and clean your house up if you talking about he don't help you clean the house up. Now, guess who can help you? That brother. Him. I am not gonna, I'm not gonna do it. So the best thing for you to do is to talk to him. Now, there are times when people don't want to do that, and they do want to continue to vent. And we can say things like, I will listen. I don't really have any feedback because, as you know, my strategy is talk to him. So I will just sit here and listen. I don't, yeah.
This is why you are a therapist, because the way my lack of a poker face is, I just be like, ma'am, my therapist be reading me for Phil too because of this, but I just ain't got my patients will run real short, real quick about the same thing over and over again. I have watched people basically run themselves into walls over and over again. And I always wonder, what is my role as a friend? Is my role as a friend to just sit there and be the listening ear? Is my role as a friend to challenge them to find the solution? To your point, being like, go talk to that person that you have a problem with is usually my first thing. But after that, when they're like, I talked to him, nothing happened, I'm just like,
you need to go repeat yourself. You need to repeat yourself. You need to say it in a different way. Did you speak to that person? I like to say this. Did you say it like that? I want to know, because the way you're saying it to me, man, it makes so much sense. Whoo, you got some points. Did you say it like that? Because sometimes in the moment, we don't say things the way we think we want to say them, and then we process it with a few people and we have a better view of it. So I wonder if you could go back now with your talking points and go back to that issue, and the person would respond differently. Again, I can listen, but I can't do anything about the problem. And that's, you're right. Like, that's why you're a therapist, because I realize that a lot of I have to wait until the next week to figure out what people did about their problem. So I'm like, okay, here's all the stuff you can do. See you next week. So I'm like, when they come back, I'm like, okay, so how was the date? I'm just waiting. I don't know what happened. And sometimes they're like, oh, we didn't go. Oh, okay. So what you want to talk about today? Let's move on.
See, that's the thing about, I think, holding people accountable too, is like reminding them of their own power and fixing those types of problems. And I think in the people pleasing of it all, people will kind of deprioritize themselves and be like, I can't say that because that's not nice. Or yeah, if I put a boundary for it, they're not gonna like it. And I'm always like, I want us to be freed from that bondage.
I love when my husband sets boundaries. Like, it gives me, it's like, oh, you set that boundary? Putting that in my pocket. I'm gonna set a boundary like that. It's like, it gives me it inspires me. Like, you said that to them? I guess I could say that to people. It's like, oh, you just told me exactly how you felt. I guess I could say exactly how. It is inspiring when I hear people, so even kids, to hear a kid say like, no, I don't want no macaroni. It's like, how pure.
I love how kids will hurt your feelings no matter what. About whatever they want. They will tell you straight up and humble you in a hot second. I don't like that. That wasn't good. Like, the purity that they come from and how we approach kids and say, well, they do say it. At what point do we lose that insistence of being ourselves? One of the people who I thoroughly enjoy his love of boundaries, my lead son, she posts about him all the time, about Noah telling his dad, like, I don't like that, or telling her, I don't like that. And I'm like, Noah is a prophet because he is so assured. And I'm just like, there's an age where that is somehow taken out of us. And I'm wondering what that age is. I think it's like 7 or 8.
So because I'm a therapist, I have 2 kids, and I'm constantly like watching, like, when does this happen? When does this happen? And I think maybe around when you enter school, I will say, like, really enter school. I think there is some shaping that happens that is appropriate for a classroom, right? So teachers and sometimes your parents will influence this too, where there is this like, that's not how you say this. We talk like this, we do that, blah, blah, blah. So it kind of makes you a little more conscious of, and I think you just become more aware of other people for real. Before you were kind of aware in a way of like, how can they help me? Get my bottle, I'm wet, do this, you know, but now you're like, oh, they want to, you know, like they have to walk in front of me. And so that awareness, you notice like, oh, that facial expression means they're sad. Oh, they're upset by this. And so it stops you from like saying what you're thinking. And we should not always say what we think, right?
Facts.
But there are some things that we think that need to be said. And we have to discern when we need to speak up for ourselves and when we need to keep things to ourselves. And so that becomes the challenge. But for parents, I think the work that we can do is allow kids to speak freely. There are so many times when kids try to talk and it's like, no, don't nobody want to hear your opinion. This is, you know, this is what's happening. It's going to happen to you, whatever. But really, kids are human. And I could think back to when I was a kid. I had questions. I had an opinion. I had all sorts of stuff. If I was in a world of COVID, do you know how many questions I would have had?
I got questions as a full-grown adult. And I'm just like, how? I have so many questions. And I'm like, so children right now, they might be like mind exploding.
And adults are not answering them. There are so many people who are not answering kids' questions because they think they're silly and they're still processing a lot of stuff. We have to talk to kids about stuff. It's like so much that kids experience. The treatment for a divorce is like, we won't talk about the divorce. We won't talk about COVID. We won't talk about grandma dying. We won't talk about, like, they don't have memories of this stuff. Like, You know what? They're young. They'll never know what happened to them. Well, they know.
Avoidance. It's because we don't want to face it ourselves. I think
absolutely.
For me, I think about how I was growing up. Who I am today is actually very similar to 7-year-old Luvvie. Like I always say that one of my gifts is that me being able to see my grandmother be this like bold woman. I modeled it and I didn't realize I was modeling it. But then also I was the 7-year-old who would tell you when she didn't like something, who would say, I don't want to eat that, or who would say, I don't feel like that's fair, no matter how much you got in trouble. And when people ask me like, when did you become a professional troublemaker? I've just never stopped being that person. I think we are all troublemakers in that way, but at some point we lose so much of it. And I think for me, I was just never told not to be it. So even the permission to ask questions endlessly, to say what you got to say, even if it's annoying, I'm still going to deal with you, right? I'm still going to give you voice and let you know it matters. I'm still going to say that your feelings are decent. I think that is the thing that I hope that we can keep and infuse in kids, is that they don't lose all of the say what I think, that they lose some of the, say it in a way that's thoughtless, lose that, sure. But I want us to not lose the say what you got to say, even when it's tough.
Even when it's tough. Pre-pandemic, I was at a concert and there was room in front of us, but for some reason, this girl kept backing up. She just kept backing up in my space. And I'm like, oh, wow, there's room. And, you know, for a second, we talked, me and my husband, we talked like, gosh, she in her space. So I tapped her and I said, hey, can you move up a bit? She turned around and was like, you're Nedra Tawwab. And I'm like, hey, girl, how are you? Boundaries, move up a little bit. You know? just a little bit.
But somebody else would not have. Somebody else would not have, though. Just it's hard.
And just then, I mean, her hair was all in the I'm like, there's a whole little space right here. Just up a little bit.
You know where I'm struggling with that boundary, actually, honestly, is when I'm in a Uber or a Lyft right now. So as much as it's easy for me to like let people know how I feel, when I'm in an Uber or a Lyft, I have trouble telling my drivers to do something different. So one of those troubles is when they're talking to me in the middle of the global pandemic, and I'm like, I want to say, hi, can you please let us have a silent ride? Because right now, every time you speak, you're spewing more particles. And in a global pandemic, I would prefer if you did not. That would be the ideal thing I said. Usually I almost hold my breath. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like, I feel like they have the power to ruin my life in that much because they're at the steering wheel.
Ooh, yeah, they have a lot of control.
Right? And I was like, ooh, maybe in this moment I can be uncomfortable with what's happening, but shut up. I was headed to the airport recently. And when I tell you this driver was speeding down the expressway, speeding, it was like 5 a.m. speeding. And I was just like, Lord, let me just make it. And I couldn't assert myself in that moment.
I wonder if he was from LA, because I had a recent experience like that in LA with a driver. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm in no hurry. You can slow down. I'm not in a hurry. I just want to get there alive, sir. Can you slow down?
Yo,
I like when people drive the speed limit. Girl, I was on that man's head so tough. And when he got out, I called the car company. I was like, yo, he was speeding. He sped the whole time. I kept having to remind him, the speed limit is 55. You're going 70. We are not in a hurry. Do you have somewhere to be? I want to be alive. I don't have anywhere to be other than alive.
So my driver had on his hood. This man had on his hood over his head. And I think his mask was down here. It was just, everything about it just felt unsafe. I was just like, Lord, please protect me during this journey, because this man is clearly not the one that's sent to protect me. It was terrible. It was terrible.
Some folks shouldn't be driving.
I gotta work on that. That's the one place where I struggle with that though, is the Uber and Lyfts. Like, I just feel like they have my life in their hands too much, and now I can't say nothing. But we're gonna work on it.
I think there is a way to say, like, I have a lot going on this morning, and I would prefer if we could just ride in silence. Mm-hmm. I wonder if setting the tone, like when you get in a car, like if you notice they've asked 3 or more questions, like, wow, this is question number 4. This is going to be a combo. I'm trying to read this thing on my phone so I can prepare for my flight or something along those lines to cue them into, I don't want to talk anymore. I have something going on. And you'd be surprised. A book doesn't do it for some people. Actively using your phone doesn't do it for some folks. And, they feel like maybe that's a part of their job to connect. But as for this ride, you don't have to do that part of your job. Stop.
Like, please don't worry about connecting with me. I'm all right. I'm the person on the plane that has on my scarf. So I am the person that looks unfriendly, that is on the plane with my sunglasses, scarf, and headphones. So that keeps people obeyed, because I just need to take a nap. That's why I catch up on my sleep. So yeah, I see somebody in the chat said for me to try and act like I'm on the phone. Now I gotta act like I'm on conversation with somebody else. I don't even want to.
No, I think that's kind of that's a way, but I think it could be a passive way. I think a more direct, assertive way would be to say to the person that I'm not in the talking spirit. It's 5 a.m.
Who should be in the talking spirit at 5 a.m.? Honestly, like, why? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I think it's better to just let people know directly. Often we will engage in a passive behavior as a way to set the boundary because it just seems easier, but actually it keeps us in a situation we don't want to be in. I once talked to someone, and this story is in the book. They had a coworker who kept asking, you want to go to lunch? You want to go to lunch? And they really didn't like this person and didn't want to go to lunch with them, but they would give like these answers of, oh, maybe tomorrow, or, just all these things. And it's really like, I like to eat lunch at my desk by myself. That's the answer. And that's what you need to say. So they're not coming back to you every day, every other day, asking you to go to lunch. Because if you give them like that little bit of hope, it's not going to work. You have to directly say, no, thank you. I prefer to just eat lunch in my car and take a nap.
So I know people struggle with that piece, that direct piece that, again, feels mean. So I'll ask people in the chats, would you be able to tell somebody directly, no, I don't want to go to lunch with you? If you would, put the thumbs up. If you will not, put the sad face. I want to see in chats what y'all think, because that approach, like the way people even think through those moments and those opportunities, it frightens folks. Like they'd be like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. So how do you help people get past that piece? We got a few sad faces.
If I would consider that like leading someone on, though, like, doesn't that hurt their feelings to have that hope each and every day that this thing is going to happen and it's not? To lead them on that long, to say, I don't know, maybe a few weeks, a month, they're thinking like, oh my gosh, this is my friend, and really is not. In workspaces, things can be awkward because you have to work with people. I know there are a lot of folks who have issues with like their coworkers following them on social media, which can be awkward, right?
Yep.
So there are a few things you could do. You could have a fake account, just a, whatever account, that's where people can go. Or you could say, hey, let's just continue to ping on this thing. I don't really use it in a work sort of capacity. I like to do stuff on there that I don't think is appropriate. You shouldn't follow me. You don't need to see my real life, Carolyn. You need to know about me as a professional.
Correct. It's why also, like, so for my social media, I have rules about how I say yes to people and how I decline people. My thing is, one, everybody that follows me. So back in the day of Twitter, when I started being on Twitter, which was 2008, at that point, it was popular to follow everybody who's following you automatically. I've always found that to be weird because I'm like, my digital space, I'm funny acting about who I let into it, because that person curates the experience. So a lot of folks be like, so you don't follow that person back? No, why? I don't have to find their content for me in that moment. So LinkedIn is a great example. Who I follow on LinkedIn or friend on LinkedIn is not necessarily the same on Facebook. I don't care if we went to college together. Will we end up at the same conferences? Will we overlap professionally? If we won't, this ain't the space for you to know what I'm up to. I mean, you can always go on my page, but I think that's actually similar to those in-person relationships. People take being unfollowed, for example, as like a personal indictment. So you're like, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. It's the same thing like going to lunch.
I've had people maybe say, I didn't know you was doing so-and-so. Why didn't you let me know? Because I'm posting it on Instagram. I also don't have time to text everybody in my phone book and say, hey, this is what I'm doing today. If you want to know those things, please follow me there. This is professional stuff. I'm calling you for a potato salad recipe. So I'm trying to figure out why you upset about something that's happening at work.
Yes. And actually, that's a real good point.
Yeah, like I don't tell you the other stuff that happens at work. For me, that is an extension of my work. Now, if you want to know work stuff, that is the space where you will find out. I didn't call and say, hey, I just renewed my license. These are not things that I've said before. So there may be some people with my mom, hey mom, my dad, that sort of stuff. But for the most part, if you want to know, that is the space to find out. I'm not clear around how we started this thing of social media means something for our relationship. Like it really means how connected we are to people. Instagram is my first, I would say, real experience, and I'm using it in a professional capacity. I tried Facebook from 2009 to 2010. Okay. I did not like it. there were so many people from elementary, middle, high school, just starting conversations. And I'm like, Jesse, I haven't seen you since fifth grade, bro. I don't. Now you're on here with this long birthday mess. I can't do it. Then people will say, like, you didn't accept, I don't even know how to use this thing. I don't even know where to find the friends. Like, I'm not taking this that serious. And people were. So I was like, let me get off of here because I'm actually ruining relationships.
See, Facebook, oh God, Facebook. Honestly, Facebook is a place where relationships are actually easily ruined because that's where you get to see people's off-the-cuff ideas.
I don't want to know people's private business.
Yeah, well, people tell their private business very easily too. And then you go, I feel like I'm watching a soap opera when I'm on Facebook. Like, I feel like I'm watching a soap opera. Nobody invited me. Well, they did invite me because they're making it public. But for Facebook especially, it's become a place where people go, I sent you a message 6 months ago on Facebook Messenger. You ain't see it. So you got mad at me because you sent me a Facebook message, which I never said I was going to be checking. And now you're upset. I can see why people get off Facebook. I use it basically as I drop and leave in Facebook. I don't hang in Facebook much. I just drop and leave.
I'm fine with it in a professional capacity, but personally, cousin, I don't want to know what's going on in your relationship and when you're mad at your boyfriend. It's too much info for me. But professionally, I love it. I like social media in that capacity, but I think we do have to find ways to have those boundaries and maybe even say to people like, this is for this and not for that, and letting people understand that about us. Because when we play like, oh, well, just be really direct with people and say, I don't want to follow people who post blank. I only want to use this
all the time.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time. I'm always like, I want to train people how to see how to treat me. Which is why I'm very loud about talking about how I use those different spaces. There are times when I'll even make a PSA. Hey, y'all, please don't send me important Facebook messages. If it's important, that is not where it belongs. Or where I'll say, if it's business related, do not DM it to me and then think that's the end all be all. Because honestly, people do get aggravated about like, oh, I've been sending 16 messages, 2 DMs in the message request folder where I didn't see it. Of course, it's not getting responded to. And I think I want us to just get used to that. Because I tell people, I say, half the reason why I'm doing this is so when I drop the ball, you don't go, well, she was being malicious. You knew I said it. I already put it in front of everybody. Like, here you go. And it's funny because both my books have a chapter on how I deal with social media and people on there. Because everybody has turned social media into the end all be all of communication, of connection, of trauma healing, which that whole thing, social media is also not therapy, but that's a whole different topic.
It's not therapy. I do think it could be therapeutic.
Yes.
But it should not be used in place of a relationship with a professional. Because I am a therapist in the space of Instagram, I get a lot of messages. I can't respond to them because they are really things that you should be talking about with a therapist, not me, not any therapist, but your therapist, right? So you can't talk, I can't help you via DM through sexual abuse. That's just not appropriate. I don't even DM my own clients. So these are things that I just can't do and no therapist should. But in my practice, I do have a form my clients have to sign just saying like, hey, you may see me on social media. You can follow me. I will not follow you. I will not Google you. If you need to contact me, we have an online system that we use. Contact me there. Do not send me a DM. Do not text me. Do not, like, all of those things are very clear. And so they can follow me, but I'm not like looking them up or sending them, but they may mention it in session like, hey, I saw you post blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, cool. I talk to them about, how do you feel about seeing me post stuff? Because really, the relationship is about them, not about me. So I'm never like, yeah, on my Instagram account, I said.
That'd be so weird. I got a new therapist this year after my old therapist died in January. Actually, my old therapist died. Oh my God. Yeah, no, my old therapist probably died almost like exactly a year ago today. Wow.
Oh.
And I never talked about social media with her. She knew of my presence because some of it will come into therapy because some of the things I had to deal with. So when she passed and I wrote a blog post about it, I didn't identify her by name. I just used her initial because I also didn't want to be the person that was breaking this news to everybody who didn't know. And the journey to getting a new therapist, I was really feeling vulnerable because my visibility was more than it was when I got my old therapist. So I was like, okay, how am I going to find a therapist who is Black, a woman,
doesn't know you,
has never not heard of me, does not read my work, none of that. And I happened to find one. And in our last session, she was laughing because we were about to get off. And I remember I mentioned something to her and she said, funny. She said, one of my clients quoted me to her. And she had to act like, oh, really? She said the client quoted my book to her and she was like, wow, okay. Because she also has told me about these different boundaries that you guys have to set. And she's like, I never Google you. I've not read any of your books. If your name comes up through another client, I act like I have no clue who you are. And I'm just like, that's gotta be so interesting for you. So how has your visibility changed how you deal with your clients?
I deal with them the same. I would say the only thing that's different is I haven't taken any new clients in the last 2 to 3 years since my visibility has increased. So a lot of my clients are people I've seen for years, older clients coming back, that sort of thing. But I think I'm just me to them. So I don't think they see me as like, oh my gosh, this is my therapist. They are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the world is finally seeing you. And now I get to be like, yes, Nedra Tawwab is my therapist. Like, they're not like weird about it. Yeah. But I stopped seeing clients right around the time when my account grew because I started getting a lot of inquiries. And I took on a few folks, but their vibe would be, so what gym do you have for me? I'm like, oh, this is not therapy.
No, they want you to
I don't be dropping gems. Well, I do be dropping gems in therapy. Yeah. My clients will be like, now that's a nugget. And I'm like, I know I need to write that one down.
Write that down.
let me write that down. I said that. So let me write it down. But I think there's this expectation that I'm constantly like speaking in like parables and, like this deep stuff. And sometimes I just listen the whole session. And at the end, I'm like, okay, let's pick up here next week. And that's it. So when people started to develop this expectation of you are Instagram, it's like, oh, no. We can't do this because truly I'm a therapist and I love this work. And I don't want you to see me as a figure. I want you to see me as your therapist.
That's important because you become less of a human when you become placed on that Instagram pedestal. Wow. So you stop taking clients. That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense because there's a lot of probably preconceptions about who you are, how you show up. You might not trust that what people's intentions are to actually sign up with you now. Dang, that's real.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to do Q&A. This has been, oh my gosh, we have just got to the end so quickly. Let's see. That's a long one. Let me start here. How can I coach someone more junior in their career about the value of being direct and assertive when it is far outside their comfort zone? You want to take that, Luvvie?
Yeah, I think the way for you to coach them is to model that. Because if you can't coach somebody to be assertive if you're not. So, for you to be able to show them that you have soared in your career and you're now successful in spite of and because you are direct and assertive will give them the confidence that they can too. It's why I show up and I try to show like I'm a Black woman who's an immigrant, who is very opinionated, very bold, and it's allowed me to thrive. So hoping other people will see that and say, okay, that's possible for me. So I think the best way to coach them is to tell your experience. You are the best case scenario. So if they can see that it can work for you, I think they'll believe it can work for them.
Best way to set a boundary for coworkers who only want to complain and gossip about other coworkers. You have to set the tone and let them know that you are not on the same wavelength. You have to let them know that I don't feel the same way. And actually, this makes me uncomfortable because I talked to this person. Or you can try changing the topic, but I think to handle it directly would be the best way to go. And I wouldn't necessarily label it as gossip because that is not going to be received well. Right. But just say that, wow, like, I don't even know that thing about them. And I really don't want to know more about that. I prefer to think of people as happy, jolly, and well, just really, I mean, when people come to you with gossip, they want you to get into it with them. They want you to throw something in there like, yeah, and she did, like all of that stuff. And typically once they see that you're not a part of that, they will stop. And when they do not, you have to directly say to them, I don't want to engage in this sort of conversation. That can be hard, but I think it's a way to stop the coworker from complaining and gossiping to you.
Yep.
Lots of professional questions. Here's another one. Where is it? When you are a professional troublemaker and are constantly ignored or pushed down, ooh, y'all just knocked my question. At what point do you just say this is enough or just remove yourself from the situation?
I honestly think when you are doing your best and you're challenging the room because it requires it and you're getting punished for it, it's going to eat away at you. Your time there is limited. So I say when you get to a point where you realize there is no changing the structure around you, the people around you, the atmosphere of this company, create your end plan, stack your money for like 6 months to a year, know that you will be leaving. I'm not saying quit tomorrow. You got bills to pay. We grown. So know what the end game is and go, all right, I see what they're doing. Understood. I'm going to spend the next 6 months prepping myself for the move I need to make. I feel like we are not, we're basically told to like fall on swords and just stay at these places. Some places can't be changed. And at that point, you got to choose yourself.
This one is for me. As a therapist, wouldn't it be helpful to learn more background and context about patients, for example, reading patients' books, etc.? Anything that I need to know about a person, they will tell me directly. Outside of the therapy hour, therapists are not paid to read a client's book. So if a client wanted to, and that's ridiculous for somebody to say, hey, I'll pay you for your time to read my book. But I don't think that's the best way to get to know a person. The best way to get to know a person is to sit in the space with them and talk to them, because their book is not exactly who they are, all of their work. Luvvie is in her book talking about being a professional troublemaker. She's not in her book talking about her siblings, the issues she has in, various situations, her personal friendships. These are all things we are not seeing in a book. So it would be wonderful for a therapist to read that perhaps. However, I'm not sure if that's the therapeutic information that would be helpful for your therapist to know you.
And I want to add one thing in there, in that I think that idea that our books really reflect our full personhood is also part of the reason why I want people to take visible people off pedestals. Yes, a certain piece about our lives, a certain piece about our thought process. But those things don't represent our totality or even close to it. There are snapshots of moments. There are deep dives into topics. But yeah, they don't speak to our traumas. And I think part of the reason why therapy is so important for me is over the years, it's forced me to become more vulnerable. So things that I would never put in a book, I'm talking to my therapist about. So yeah, my therapist can't read about me in my book in a way that will actually help me in a session.
Absolutely. My therapist could write the book on me though. I'm gonna have her sign an NDA.
Chad, listen. Listen, my therapist could scalp me, okay, get me together. But that's the value of therapy. Y'all done signed all types of Hippocratic oaths and whatnot. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I think that we think that could be helpful, but it's really not. I would even say when I do a client intake and people write too much, like I will stop them like, hey, that says, what is the problem? That's one sentence. I don't need you to go back and write a whole biography of what has happened, because guess what we're going to do? Talk. I know how to talk to you in a way that will pull out the information that is actually helpful, because what you're about to write, it's not going to be helpful. You're going to be telling me about your bike riding experience and all of this stuff. And all I need to know was who grew up in your house.
But so see, people think they can shortcut that though. They're thinking if I can download all this stuff in the intake to Nedra, then we can skip 3 sessions with the work because we can already start at grade 3. Meanwhile, you're like, no. I just need to know these things.
These things only. And we'll move from there, because none of that is telling me feeling. None of that is telling me reaction. That's just, all of this happened. Let's talk about it. So I think therapy is a whole process that is different than what we think it is. I think the thing about social media and seeing therapists in that space is we get to talk about some of those concepts, but there are so many things that you feel personally, that you get personally from a therapist that cannot be captured by reading someone's content, or even, Luvvie saying, well, when I went to my therapy session, it's because I've seen you say that my therapist said, like, that's great. And that really, I'm sure for you, that was like deep, and it might be helpful to see what Luvvie's therapist said, but boy, oh boy, when your therapist know your particular story and says something exactly for you, that is when your life will change. It's great. Keep sharing your therapy stories, but you need to have your own stories about what's being said in those sessions.
Nedra, well, I'll have a question that I want you to answer for these people who are on here. And I know everybody in here is not in therapy. And there's probably somebody on here who's on the fence about starting therapy. They don't know where to start. They don't know what to look for. Can you tell people what to look for when looking for a therapist?
Like, that sounds like an altar call.
It is an altar call. Come on. Give the people what they need.
The doors of the therapy are open.
Is open. Is there one? Is there one?
Is there one? Where's the organist? Okay. So I think when we're looking for a therapist, we have to know what our issue is. The best way, I think, to find a therapist is to Google your issue in your city. So often we see therapists and we're like, oh, we like her, but we like the way she look, or she, she's this, she's that, or he's that. You need somebody who deals with your particular issue. If you have issues with your mother, you want to make sure that that therapist has experience helping people with mother-daughter relationships, because that is your particular challenge. It's great if they have training in EMDR and trauma and all this stuff, but if they don't help with mother-daughter relationships, you may not be receiving the full benefits of therapy. So it is so important that you start with your particular need. It may not be your friend's therapist. It may not be your coworker's therapist, because sometimes we will like our therapist so much, we'll tell our friends and family, oh, you have to go and see whoever. And they go and they don't have the same experience. They're like, oh, I didn't really like the therapist. Yeah, because that therapist was for your friend and their particular issue. In any relationship, you will be trying to figure out if this fits. So when you find a therapist and you feel like, oh, let's see, have a call with them. Figure out if it's a good match. Ask a few questions, just like you would ask anybody when you're getting into a relationship. For a therapist, it would be, What is your treatment philosophy? Do you have experience with this particular issue that I'm having? Will you give homework? How often do you think we should meet? Those sort of questions that are important to you. And I will say this, some people get turned off because I don't want to go to therapy every week. It's your process. You could go to therapy every week, every other week, once a month, yearly, whatever you feel. It is your money and you are paying. You figure it out, what works for you.
Okay. I hope y'all took those notes, because I think this is a topic that I'm thankful for your presence, because you've probably opened the door to people being more open to therapy than you even understand. And the conversations, social media is not there. It's not therapy, but it is therapeutic, is really helpful. Like the fact that some of us really talk about, what our therapist said that day. And when I post about what my therapist said, it is one gem in a whole session that you don't even like, of me being a mess and then her having that one thing to say, so understanding that, yes, therapy through other people's lessons is still not considered therapy. Please go to a professional. Nedra, you are amazing.
Thank you.
You are incredible. I love just showing up on social every day and being like, what gem she got? What she got today? Because these nuggets that you be dropping left and right all over the place, you're sprinkling them like salt. Just seasoning Instagram with all the gems.
Yeah. I remember one post that you liked, and you had like a whole little paragraph about it. It was something about things that are actually your fault or something like that. And the first thing on the list was something about like, sometimes you are responsible for doing things, like that accountability piece. And I think that really stuck with you. That was what the paragraph was about. And I'm like, yeah, like everything is not your fault, but some stuff is. And when you talk to a therapist, a good therapist is going to help you see your issue, your role in your problems, because it's easy to think that it's other people, other stuff. Time is not on my side. Well, girl, you the one with the watch. Time is on your side. You wearing the Apple Watch. So how do you want to handle time? Everybody got the same 24. How do you want to handle time? How do you want to talk to your boss? What do you want to do in your relationship? So yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, she liked that one. Accountability. Yes.
Accountability. Listen, I'm here for that. Like, I just need us to be clear. Self-awareness is a big deal. You recently talked about that. I feel like the lack of self-awareness just be beating people up. So hoping as more people go to therapy, as more of us are reading some of these graphics and it's reading us to ourselves, that we start going, yeah, that's me. Like, that's me. And you're like, I should fix that. So thank you so much for saying yes.
You're welcome. This was fun. We need more talks.
We do. We need like IG live soon or something for the people.
Yes.
I'd just like to echo my thanks there. Thank you, Luvvie. Thank you, Nedra, for such a just like fun, gem-filled conversation. I took notes. And to our audience, thank you for joining us tonight. To everyone who came, you're already receiving a copy of Professional Troublemaker, but if you'd like to pick up a second, I've dropped links in the chat, and you can also pick up a copy of Nedra's book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace.
Yes, you should.
Also available at strandbooks.com. And on that note, thank you everyone and have a wonderful evening.
Bye.